Hey, welcome to Intuitive Insights with Megan McDonough. I have my wonderful friend London Reber here today, and we had such an amazing time talking and exploring the idea of intuition in our lives and our work. That this is a two-part series. So stay tuned for this first section on pivoting the conversation of life choices with London Reber. Hello and welcome to Intuitive Insights. I'm your host, Megan McDonough. This is where we discuss all things intuition. And today we're working with our interview series, asking fabulous people like our London Reber here, what intuition is to them and how do they use it or utilize it in their life and in their work. So I have the honor and the privilege of introducing my friend here, London Reber. She is a beacon of inspiration and transformation. Um, London was crowned Miss California, United States in 2012. She has since channeled her passion for positive change into her role as a pivot relationship coach, offering invaluable insights and guiding individuals on their journeys to self-improvement. She's a devoted mother and stepmom. Her most recent title is being awarded Super Mom 2023, which is a huge thing. It's a cherished testament to her unwavering dedication to family. I can definitely attest to that. London has been sober for 12 years, and she believes in the power of spirituality to unlock a fulfilling life and embodying the mantra, changing your mind changes your life.
Mm.
Welcome, London.
Hi.
London and I worked together eons ago at a bar of all
Mhm.
places in Venice, and that is how we know each other from years back. But I feel like we've been a million different people since then. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I and always still ourselves, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Like you and I were attracted to each other then, and now we've gone on all these journeys to get to where we are, and we're still attracted to each other now.
100%, 100%. And and like yes, absolutely. Like the core of us, our souls are connected, you know,
Mm.
but the life stages change.
And possibly we were still intuitively guided back then, even
Yeah.
though we had all these things that were blocking it, that we have
100%.
now been able to uncover and discard.
And admit how
Yes.
guided we are. So, on that note, let's kick off these questions. What is intuition to you, Miss London Reber?
Okay. Yeah. So the way I use intuition, I'd say on a daily basis, is I believe in intuitive thought.
Mhm.
I have been able to start as I've like tried to get more connected with a higher power. I was introduced to that through my sobriety and the necessity of developing a relationship with a higher power of my own understanding. And as I attempted to get more connected with that, I was able to discern the sound of my own chatter, my conditioning, my disease, my younger parts of self, still in there, and then my intuitive thought. Like one kind of sounds like a yappy chihuahua, and it's like,
Yeah. Yep.
and the other one is kind of like the howl of a wolf, right? Like my intuitive thought, it comes in and it's like I can hear the difference of like, turn left here when you would normally drive straight. Every time you take this route, let's just turn left this time, right? Versus like, oh my gosh, there's traffic and da 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 da. I can now turn up the volume intentionally on my intuitive thought and turn down the volume on the rest of the chatter.
Yeah. Do you find like, so I actually just did a podcast on this, well, intuition versus instinct, but
Mm,
um, uh, I find that the voice of intuition is there's a quality of it that's easy, quiet, like it's quieter, it's a little easier, and it's not attached to anything emotionally.
mm.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have anxiety attached or fear attached or worry attached. It's just kind of like a thought. you
That's
know,
so
I- How do you
I
feel about
agree. I agree that it's definitely like the one that's down underneath like this, say, my higher power, I was able to just define as love, and all the things that you just mentioned, anxiety, fear, right? Those are all just in the fear umbrella, basically to me, worry, obsession, compulsion. And so if I'm doing something loving, thinking something loving, saying something loving, then I believe that I'm in my God's spirit will for my life, right? And so the ability to hear something loving is not forceful and it's not pressuring me and versus the other one. So yeah, there is an actual like sense physically in my body for one or the other when it's an instinct like this or when it's like intuition. Like one's pulling me along and the other one's like
yeah,
pushing.
yeah. Qualities are definitely different. Like the style of vibration is different.
Mm,
Like the tempo and the volume and like like you were kind of just demonstrating like legato, that term you'd use in music, which is just kind of smooth, versus staccato, which is that you know
yeah,
that that kind of chihuahua like energy. So you kind of spoke to this a little bit, but uh so you're a pivot relationship coach, and I know you pull a lot of your intuition into your work, but what does that look like for you? And is that something you always did or made a conscious effort to bring in? Or,
sure. Yeah, I actually you introduced me to Earth Magic Academy a while back when you went through it, and it took me a few years to hop on the bandwagon. So I just completed that actually for a whole year. I did phase one and phase two, and I completed that in March. And that has definitely supported me to bring my intuition into my pivot work even more. I do believe that I always had this strong gut feeling and guidance, even in like playing sports and stuff. Like I could sense the people like what that I couldn't see. And even my daughter, she's like, "How did you know that, Mom? You were looking in the other direction." And I'm like,
feel my body. I feel,
right?
yeah.
So I think the most powerful way that I use it in my work is by not rushing and not feeling like I need to solve or fix their problems or them. That I am there to guide the journey of their self discovery. And I use the curriculum to do that. And I ask questions, a lot of questions. And then if I'm feeling like shook up at all, or in pivot terms, like if I'm rocked out of my healthy adult, out of my alignment, then I allow myself to take a pause and I say, like, let me just take that in for a second. And then I respond instead of react.
Mm, I love that. I love that. Um, Speaking of pivot, can you talk a little bit about what it is and how you got involved in it?
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you. I got certified as a coach almost 5 years ago. And about 10 years ago, this August, September, I actually went to the retreat portion as a client myself.
Okay.
So it's a curriculum-based process. And back then it was only a retreat and it was a 12-day retreat. So now it's 5 days.
Okay.
And so it's a little less intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more accessible for more people.
Yeah.
And yet I was full immersion 12 days in. And at the time when you left the retreat, there was no real aftercare follow-up, which now my coaching is part of that. That's how the coaching actually got developed, because it's through Zoom or the phone if you need the phone. And so when Lori Jean Glass, who's the founder and creator of the process, she wrote a book called #Healthy Adult. And she was doing her book launch in LA, which is where I currently live. And she invited me to come. And I went and I found out that there was the coaching aspect. And currently, at the time, I was doing sober companioning, which is really intense. A lot of my clients, I was live in with them. And There is a treatment team aspect of that, and I'm there when I was a sober companion, I was there to like observe and report to the treatment team, like boots on the ground. And yet in real time in their home, it was a bit of throwing noodles against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that I use my intuition constantly there, right? Like, how do I stay in my healthy adult alignment while someone else is in the most
Mm,
challenging time of their life?
yeah.
Um, and in early sobriety and all the things. So I found out about the coaching option and I was like, immediately, I need this. I want to do this. This is me. Yes, please. And I got certified. So I was already doing distance coaching like this when COVID happened.
Mm,
And I was able to continue working with my clients and homeschool during that time. And then since I have transitioned to fully just pivot coaching. It is for anyone and everyone. It's for a lot of people will come for a specific relationship and then realize that it's mostly about the relationship with ourselves and uh, you know like and how we are attaching in situations with different people, places, and things, how the essence of our younger parts of self is still alive in us and will jump in the driver's seat when something feels familiar and we'll be attracted to that regardless of the merit. um, and really it's looking at our survival patterns and how we can pivot into repairs and healthy do's instead of these habitual do's that we're
mm,
constantly like just on autopilot in. We use something that I love. It's like the foundation of it all. It's called the whole perspective. And it's basically like a lens you can start to view your life through. And it's takes into consideration 5 different categories. So it's emotional, physical, intellectual, financial, and spiritual.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's a lot of people will get into like an intimate relationship based on like 2 of the categories, maybe 3,
Right.
and not
Right.
even consider the other or just paint the red flags green.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So once you get this tool in your tool belt and you start really using it, it's so powerful for any decision you're wanting to make. Like, should I change my job? Do we want to move? And you can consider like how much time is spent in traffic and what does that do to my intellect and my spirit and my physical time, like where that's spent. Is it worth that promotion, the money, right? So trying to have all of those as balanced as possible or like at least around a 7 because the goal is to be in our healthy adult 70% of the day.
It's a fair
Right?
percentage.
It's realistic. And it's a C, average, so it's like, okay, the other 30%, maybe your child part of self or your teenager who might be like feisty or who's really trying to individuate in a circumstance, right? Or your adult self that is not necessarily your healthy adult. One of those other 3 parts gets in the driver's seat and is driving the car the other 30% of the day, and that's okay because we have repairs for that and we have this healthy adult muscle that can come in and reparent those younger parts of self that are having that reaction and doing that habitual do. Is this making sense?
It does. It's actually sounding a little bit like family systems. I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's a type of therapy. Interfamily systems, I think IFS, I think that's what it's called. I'll have to, I'm going to double check on that, but that's a therapy that I've been using. And what it does is it looks at, or been, my therapist does, and I've been with her for a while, but it separates your parts of self to help in like which part of self is in the driver's seat, like you said, and how is that serving or not, and then what part could balance that out or help what you need. So you have it's coming from that, like you said, which I think is beautiful. You are whole. Just which part of your whole needs balance right now? Like whole doesn't
Yeah.
always balance.
And support. So with Pivot, it's like we don't expect that our child or teen is going to be able to handle the healthy adult situation, and be in a healthy adult relationship. It's like we don't expect that part of ourselves to be the one to do the healing or the repair, right? It's the healthy adult self that comes in and soothes and comforts and shows that part of us that we matter and that we're enough and that we're worthy of love just the way that we are. And so that part of us can then chill out and, relax and attach more securely in the ability to trust what we ourselves are going to do next is in our best interest. Because like for me, my teen is really aggressive and had a lot of anger and was there to make sure that I never felt the pain that my child went through again. So it was like my teen was like the gatekeeper so that no way I'm going to get hurt like that again. And so when I hear myself be snappy or feisty in real time today, I'm like, oh, hello. Right. And
Yeah.
it's like I can then just acknowledge that that part of me is feeling scared or threatened or, right. And what can I do to now support that part of me to trust that my healthy adult is got it. I got it. I got this, and we're not going down that path again. I'm here to protect you. I'm here to take care of you in the way that you always needed me to, needed someone to.
Yeah, it's almost I have a neighbor who jokes and she calls one of her jokes is like all my people in her head. You know what I mean? She's like, I have to have a talk with all my people and then figure out which way we're going. You know what I mean? Like it's another way of saying these different parts of self and who's in operation, who's not.
Which is really evident actually in this kid movies of the Inside Out and the Inside Out 2 movie that just came out. The whole movie, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much pivot right here.
Did you see it already? The
Yeah.
second? Okay.
Yeah.
Take the kids this week.
It's
Speaking of
really
kids,
good. Have you seen it?
no, I saw the first one. I think it's supposed to rain this. We have no camps this week or next. So I'm like really like juggling to find entertainment. So I'm like, it's raining. I'll take them to a movie. I'll go see it Inside Out too. Okay, but speaking of kids, I had two things that I wanted to ask you. One is how do you use this? So you've got the knowledge structure of the pivot program, and then you have your intuition, which are not. I'm not saying they're different, but I'm. How do you use those together, and do
Sure.
you, as a parent, as a mom?
Yeah. So a big part of Pivot 2 is about attachment. And we have a little tweak in the languaging that we use because it seems like a lot of attachment theory things kind of put you in a box of one style. And so we acknowledge that you probably have a primary style. Each part of you might even have a primary style. And yet, every person attaches in all of the categories depending on what or who they're attaching to. And the goal is to attach securely. So we call it anxious, ambivalent, and avoidant. So the ambivalent is where you're thinking, feeling, thinking, feeling, thinking, feeling, and having a really tough time getting into action, doing the
Right.
do. So you're real stuck. And in that category, you have a low perception of yourself and a low perception of others.
Interesting.
So you're just really stuck. And that's that lower quadrant, like diagonal from the secure attachment, which like if a lot of the images show that they're like in this box of 4. So then you can, when you're attaching anxiously, you're actually feeling, doing, and then thinking about it. So you feel something, you want to get out of that feeling. You just
Like
jump into action.
yeah, without thinking. Is that
You're
what you
right.
mean?
And then you think about it, and you're like, oh man, what did I just do? Right. So in that one, we usually have a high perception of others and a low perception of ourselves.
Sure.
So we're just trying to fix it, fix it, fix it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then attaching avoidantly, we actually have a higher perception of ourselves and a lower perception of others, meaning like we might not trust the other person or something. And that one we think and then do. And then maybe if we're lucky, we feel something. We let ourselves drop down into our heart. And usually if that's the primary attachment style, as soon as it drops here, it's like, whoop, no way. I'm not feeling any of that. So you go right back into the thinking and acting. And so the goal, when you have a high perception of yourself and the high perception of others, the goal to attach securely is to be able to think, like, what am I thinking right now? Able to acknowledge how we're feeling, name our feelings, take a moment to breathe into that feeling, and then act congruently. So all three of them happening at once. So I'm thinking that was super rude what she just said to me. Right? I'm feeling really disrespected, right? Like, or I'm feeling disappointed.
Yeah.
frustrated.
Yeah.
And if I like, it's not about we have to think positive thoughts all the time. It's like acknowledging what we're really
Oh,
thinking and being
absolutely.
present. And
Yeah.
then being able to choose a healthy do, right? That's where the pivot lives. When I used to think, she's being a jerk or whatever I just said, and I felt offended, I would do a habitual do of something snarky or, fight fire with fire. And so
Yeah.
the pivot is to do the healthy do is to like maybe be like, take a breath. Clearly she's having a hard time. She's not giving me a hard time. Be able to say something like that to myself and to realize I have nothing more to say to her and just to wish her a good day and walk away or something, right? That would be to be attaching securely no matter what someone else is doing. So with my children and parenting,
Yeah.
that's where like this muscle is like growing stronger with every day is how do I attach securely
Yeah.
when they're screaming in my face um,
Or
that they don't
repeating
want to do something.
and repeating and repeating and repeating. And you're just like, oh my God. And even the idea of fear, this is the other thing that actually has been pulled up because I agree with you. I talk about there's one frequency, that's love. But in order to see the love, we have fear, but we can't get stuck in the fear. The fear is just there to show us the light and how to see it in different facets, right? So I talk a lot about, try and get out of fear, get back into love, get out of, the fear frequencies and get back into love frequencies, right? But then when it comes to parenting, you know what I mean? Like I think it was my mother said something to me and I was like, oh, well, that was a beautiful little fear nugget wrapped in some protective love blanket, you
I
know?
remember I listened to that
I,
podcast you put out. I
I
remember
know.
that.
I was like, you just take your fear and you keep it to yourself. I don't need it, right? But then I thought, like, shit, pardon my French, but I do this with my kids. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
where you just because of it's the love fear thing gets, when you love so much, the true love lets go. The true love trusts and has faith. But when we have our little kids and they're doing something we know is dangerous, it's like, it's really,
Right.
that's a hard line to
Because
define.
we have signed up to be their guide. And, I think their guide in all five of those categories from the whole perspective. And there is a point when they need to individuate, or lots of points, where we need to loosen the reins and give more and more space. And there is so much value in learning from experience, like them falling in any of the five categories, not just physically, right? Like falling and eating it, and then us being there to support them in how they figure out how to get back up is going to be so much more valuable in the big picture when we're not around than just protecting them from falling at all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had an issue with my daughter recently in her school. And I mean, it's a common young girl thing, with, it was like I don't know, people were like, I don't want to use the word bullying, but it was just like, not being kind. We'll just say that. Right. And what was hard was I was like, you want to protect them from pain. But like, I look back on an issue that I had that was similar when I was a kid. And I was like, that issue defined a perspective of mine that became like a tenet of who I am, that like the label doesn't matter. It's the quality, not the label. You know what I mean? As a human, as a person, and in general, happen to be about fashion. But, like if it's cute, it's cute. Doesn't have to have a big label. So that was like something that defined something for me. Because what the issue was when I was a kid, we had a non-uniform day and the girls came up to me and were like, popular girls, and they were like, oh, I love your outfit, I love your outfit, and they wanted to see who designed it, what the designer was. And it was like from TJ Maxx or something, I don't know, and
Yeah.
as soon as I found out it wasn't a designer label, they were no longer interested in my outfit. So that taught me something about like my values, right? And if and it was painful, but if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't have been able to define that value for myself. That
So as parents, I think the
Right.
key element is that we are there to help them with how they define that, because it could have gone so many ways to where
True.
you're obsessed with labels and you become a workaholic and all you care about is money so that you can have the right things so that you can feel lovable, right?
100%. 100%. Yes.
So it's not protecting them from experiencing those things. It's just like being there when they're experiencing them to, yeah, right? Like, so I call it the bumpers, like they're
Yes.
bowling and I want to
Yeah.
help them hit the pins and not fall in the gutter, but I am not in charge of the throw and I'm not in charge of, I can't control which pins they hit, but I can be these bumpers until a certain age, and I don't know, maybe we take off one before we take off the other or something, however that metaphor ends up working out.
Really slowly go down.
Yeah, a little bit, a little. Or, once the gutters are open, we're still sitting there at the scoreboard and we're still discussing with them on how they could adjust if they're open to our suggestion to hit the pins better,
Yeah.
and helping them like what do I do when I go in the gutter, right? How do I support myself with the feelings that come up when I get a gutter ball?
Right. And then get back in the game. Right.
Yeah, right, right. Stay in the game and could keep showing up. And I mean, I am absolutely not a perfect parent. I don't think it exists. I think
No.
the best I can do is to return to do a repair after an eruption, right? I do have eruptions, especially and pretty much only with my middle daughter.
Yes.
Um,
Right. There's always one that that is a more karmic challenge, relationship karmic challenge.
Which is so interesting that you put it that way. And also because we're talking about intuition and all that is like, so she's my only biological female child.
Yeah.
Our oldest daughter is my stepdaughter, and she lives with us full time. So I do most mom things for her every day. And also, she came out of a different body, right? So she has different DNA. And I do believe that our souls chose each other. Like she had to come through those parents at that time, somehow knowing that like I was going to be the wife of her dad and bring in her siblings, right? I do believe that there is also karmic stuff there. And my mom is highly intuitive. We recently just found the human design
I know human design.
lane.
Yes.
We just recently learned about that, and we both in our crown center, we both have it's completely open, both her and I.
And me, all three of us. I sent her mine as well.
You
It was
too?
yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So the woman who was reading my chart, she was like, "So that means you're probably really intuitive, and you might even like speak directly to God." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, like you're like on speed dial. You're like, hold on, let me just get this cleared. I gotta call God real quick.
Right, which is that
Yeah.
thing that tells me like turn left when you normally go straight, like how clearly I can hear that. And so I do recognize that the channel might not be that clear for everyone if you're in the woo woo side of things. And so my mom is really intuitive. Her mom was actually in like psych wards and institutions and stuff. My mom was born in 48, so her mom is around that time is living that kind of life, and used to take my mom to like Indian burial grounds to like and I would ask her like can you tell me what the spirits are saying? Like she would like, so I am third generation at least of
Yes.
of women acknowledging some kind of psychic stuff beyond connected to spirit world directly. And now I have this biological daughter who's my middle child, and she's the one I erupt with. She is the one that is such a valuable teacher for me, um, and is challenging me on how to grow my healthy adult muscle, even in new and different ways. Right when I think I got it, it's like we never graduate.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. So I go to this Buddhist temple, and the monk had said used this story a couple of weeks ago, and it just made me think of this, where this like really acclaimed monk had this cook who was just like a real jerk, and everyone thought he was a jerk, and he was mean, and he was angry all the time. And so people came to him and they to the monk and said, like this guy is kind of a jerk. We're gonna, why don't we get somebody nicer for you, more like peaceful and whatever. And the monk was like, oh God, no, 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 no. He teaches me every day. Like he was like, it was like a beautiful way of saying like he is like my biggest teacher. You
Mhm.
can't remove him, you know? So
It's,
it's like,
it's the same as what you're saying, where we need fear and we need to acknowledge it. We know we don't want to be like good vibes only, because we
yeah,
need
not the
the
earth.
darkness to show
That's
us the contrast. Say that again.
that's not the earth. The earth isn't just energy.
Water.
Yeah, exactly. It's all the things, it's density and energy and all the things. And but like in yoga they say that the trick is to be in the world but not of it, or I always screw that up, whichever one it is. But the point but it means to not get stuck to it, not get um and like within intuition, taking it back to that, um not get stuck in the anxieties of the outside world or the fears, but trusting that internal, the constant is the love, the constant is the soul, the constant is the voice of the intuition,
I
you know.
I think you nailed it, even being like the constant is.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
No. And like when we came into this world, we didn't have to do anything to prove we were worth loving. That infant that just pops out, is like precious and valuable and lovable and enough just the way that it is. And it matters. And like it's like we come in, I think, with, if you imagine like a light bulb, with this spirit and the love and the connection to our higher power. And then life on life's terms, like stuff keeps happening and we're like throwing dirt
Yes.
over it. And it's like now we have this giant mound and you can't even see the light sometimes at all. And it's like, I think I've lost it.
Yeah.
And to me, like getting sober, like that was the spiritual malady. That was a sick spirit. And my spirit got so sick that I still had enough outside stuff, a place to live, a car to drive, a job. And I would imagine driving off of the canyons, in like driving to work in Malibu. I'm driving to work in Malibu, and I was imagining driving off to make it look like an accident so that it would hurt my family less, because my spirit was so sick that I thought like it was easier and more probable that I should just die than face what like it took to dig, like clean off, scrub and shovel off all the stuff that
Yeah.
life and myself and my choices um and other people's choices and the stories I made up about those choices put all over my spirit. And so it is not easy, right? This journey of getting more connected with that intuition, that intuitive guidance that we've always had. And it is so incredibly worth it.
Yes. It's interesting that you use that analogy because okay, so I've been sober for 2.5 years. And I and what I did right before that was I was kind of playing around with it in my head, like should I, I would say I'm more like a partier drinker who could, but also I battle with depression, if I'm completely honest. It's just part of my biology, right? My heredity. So it always made that worse, And so if I was just a partier but if I caught myself in a bad emotional imbalance, it could go towards a space that would be, addictive or addictive behaviors. And so, but I would always clean myself back up. So it was kind of this up and down and up and down, right? And it was something I always battled with. And I'd had a lot of healthy habits and then some, balanced out with some unhealthy. But then I was starting, especially with kids, I was like, I don't want this feeling, as I wanted my kids so bad. And when I was able to have them, and when I was gifted them, I feel like, that I was like, I didn't want these feelings again. And I'd done this short film called Gray Area. And it was based on this book that this woman wrote, where she has been sober. Gosh, I think she was almost 20 years. I might be making that up, but it's been a while. And she's a therapist. And it was about gray area drinking, which kind of really defined it for me, which is that like I don't know, like moms and Chardonnay. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like you're drinking a lot and you're not necessarily like the poster child of an alcoholic. You know, you're just a suburban mom or whatever, or just whatever you want, how you want to define it. But it's not fulfilling you and it's not escalating you or moving you forward in any way, right? So, right before I just said, forget it, I'm just going to be done for a while, I had this visual, and the visual was like a freshly dug grave. And there was a body at the bottom of it, just kind of laying there still, like alive, but like immobile, you know,
Mm,
looking up at the person shoveling the dirt on them. And when they looked back up at the person, it was the person who was at the bottom of the grave. So it was like me shoveling dirt on myself. And I was like, I don't want to cover up my
mm,
unique weirdness and light anymore. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to cover it up. Why should we cover it up? Why do we have to be the same?
We
You know?
don't. Yeah. And we're not supposed to be. Yeah. And amen that you found that. And I love that it came to you in a visual. I remember watching that film when you shared it on like social media, and you and I hadn't talked for a long time at that point. And I cried through that movie because I could relate so much. I was not a mom yet. I guess maybe I was when the movie came out. It was only a few years ago. Maybe I was not a mom when I got sober. So I was a mom when the movie came out. Maybe that's why it
Yes.
hit me
Yes.
so hard.
Yeah.
Um, and yet I imagined that I would have like vodka in a water bottle at soccer games or something like before before I got sober.
Like
I
a water bottle. Yeah.
and that idea of like the same, like the dirt just covering it up. There's like this saying that the bottom is wherever we stop digging, that the bottom will just keep digging until death, right? Like we can just keep digging and digging and digging. And the bottom is just wherever we stop. So if you're like, oh, I haven't hit a bottom, it's just wherever you stop digging. And
Yeah.
what and then you can start turning, pivoting and going in the other direction. And that I think it's important. I love that you're bringing this up because I think it's important for people to see women like us whose bottoms were relatively higher than what you would assume, who have said it's not serving me. I'm not growing in my life. I'm not accomplishing new things. I literally became Miss California months after stopping. Like I would, one of my reasons for stopping was like I'm not advancing. I was still at the bar and where you and I met working in my 20s, and I was just like, what's next? Like it's not happening, it's not coming, and like I just feel so stuck. And that was November of 2011, and then in spring of 2012 I became Miss California. It was like, right, by removing this thing that I was using as this buffer to not have to feel my feelings or to make my feelings greater, like to make the good feelings better and the bad feelings disappear. And it was like I could never stay buzzed or drunk long enough for either of those to be maintainable, right? Like
Mm.
you always come down. And they say that like you can't stay drunk on yesterday's booze. So it's like I can't stay sober on yesterday's connection with God, on yesterday's spirituality, on yesterday's prayer and meditation and writing and reading and seeking, right? I've got to continue to show up. That I think that's how one day at a time comes into play for me, is I've got to show up to stay sober today, just like I would show up to get a little relief from Chardonnay yesterday.
Ironically, I hated Chardonnay. I'm just going to say that right
Yeah,
now.
me too. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I was like, no, I was like, oh, Grigio, Sauvignon
Yeah,
Blanc. I did not like Chardonnay either. That's so.
I actually, but Sauvignon Blanc was like the worst. But I didn't want to like, and this actually pulls back into intuition because
100%.
okay, I have a theory that like I have a theory that we're hybrid beings, right? But it's like our bodies are hybrid cars, okay? But we're only putting gasoline in all day long because we can see the gasoline. You know what I mean? And so, and yes, those of us who are aware of our energetic selves meditate and do other types of practices to help fill up that gas tank, right? But we have, and part of that energetic part of our hybrid selves is our intuition. And it's how we speak to it. And so, or connect with it, communicate with it. And like once, so right around the time I was I choosing to be sober, I was also really rediscovering this intuitive path of mine. And I was just, it was like, I don't want to be afraid of it anymore. And I don't want to, that's where the burying came in for me, was that numbing, like, because when you're a sensitive being, which we all are,
Yeah.
some of us more so than others, but when you're a sensitive being, it's
Yeah.
it's a gift, because it makes the challenges in this life much more rich, but it also hurts.
Yeah. Which I think anything I've come up against one thing after another that what could be considered both a blessing and a curse, right? The gift and the challenge. Like I think everything probably has both, just like there's always fear and love. And yes, my biological female daughter is a highly sensitive person. I just saw on some TV show on an airplane. It was on White Lotus. The daughter was like talking about her friend. She's like, she's an HSP, and then her mom's like, what is that? She was like, a highly sensitive person, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's already an acronym or whatever for whatever you call it. So, Michaela is my middle daughter. She is absolutely highly sensitive. And we have talked now about how that's her superpower. And she goes, but mommy, it hurts so much. Why did I like things hurt me more than they hurt her brother and her sister? And I go, and also it's going to be the thing that gives you like so much strength and so much ability to show up in this world in a different way. And so in parenting, being able to guide her through that, I've also realized like how highly sensitive I am, and how I think you're right that like numbing or like shutting up the committee in our head
Yeah, yeah,
was such a big part of why I drank.
yeah,
And also like it was what you said about when you were digging the hole or like throwing the dirt in, like you didn't want to cover up your true self anymore. In our upbringing, whoever your parent, your primary caregiver is, a lot of children, what naturally happens is we come to these constant forks in the road where we have to pick between our authenticity and the connection with that primary caregiver. And we'll almost always pick the connection because we're like surviving off of them. Like if you have children right now, or if you can imagine yourself as a child, speaking to whoever's listening to this, right? You imagine how many times when your authenticity, your intuition was telling you this is what's right for you, and you had, or you chose, or you thought you had no choice to go with what the primary caregiver wanted or needed you to do because you needed to maintain that connection even more than you even knew that you needed to maintain your authenticity.
Thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned for the follow-up second part of this Life Choices Pivoting the Conversation with London Reber, coming out in a couple of weeks. If you want to talk to London, you can find her at it's London _ on all socials. And you can find me at Magnetize Your Light.